My name is Harper Lane. I am 29 years old and at my nephew's spit, the room decided I was nothing. If you're watching this, drop a comment. Hit like and subscribe, because sometimes a single dinner reveals everything that's been building for years and the next steps matter. We were at Mom's, the long oak table under the pendant light that made everyone look polite. My sister Riley sat at the head like she'd been born with that spot reserved. My husband Owen, quiet most nights, scrolled a recipe video not looking up. My mother Donna arranged plates like crowns. My father Earl laughed like it was his job. My nephew Luca, 7 and rehearsed, spat into my plate, eyes bright with the kind of cruelty he'd been taught to perform. Dad says you deserve it, he snarled. Heads tilted. Laughter bubbled, the kind that smothers a person. I stayed silent. I smiled. Because the world expects the quiet one to be small enough to swallow degradation and still buy the pie. So I smiled, watched the gravy tremble and left the table with the plate untouched. Back at home, my fingers hovered above my phone. Mom's message arrived not a minute later. Don't contact us again. Owen replied with a thumbs up. Silence wrapped me like a wet coat. If you're here, ask yourself, have you ever been cut out with a sentence typed like a verdict? Tell me below what you did next. I took a breath and typed, understood. House debt autopay ends tomorrow. Then I hit send. I'd been the one paying extra for the roof, the furnace fixes, the temporary loans that never returned. I'd been the silent backup, the one who fixed their emergencies while being erased. The autopay cancellation was not a bluff. It was a deadline. It was a ledger. Quiet, immovable, factual. Within an hour the family chat pinged like a swarm. Furious emojis, accusations, how could you, we raised you, and worst of all, performative outrage from the people who'd taught my nephew how to hate me. Owen put his phone down and kissed my forehead. You okay? He asked. The U-shaped crease in his brow didn't look like support. It looked like calculation. At 11:42 p.m. the chat exploded in a new direction. One message that changed the tone and the risk. We'll repossess if you don't reverse. Think about the kids. I read it once and then I smiled at the dark window like someone who'd found the last piece of a puzzle. I opened my laptop and began cataloging. Next, part 2. The ledger I had been keeping by morning. The house hummed, the low noise of small engines. Dishwashers, vacuums, the quiet of people pretending ownership. I sat at the kitchen island and pulled a thin, battered notebook from the drawer. The ledger. I'd kept it for years. Receipts, dates, late-night transfers, text threads where, I'll pay you back. Read like a prayer no one answered. Backstory quick and true. Donna, Mom's school cafeteria manager. Smiles like a public service announcement. Likes family stories edited for guests. Earl, Dad retired union foreman. Loud on principle, quiet on repayment. Riley, sister freelance wedding stylist. Wants applause more than accountability. Luca, nephew rehearsed cruelty, taught by example. Owen, husband software tester. Calm but calculative, has a loyalty problem. Aunt June, retired postal worker. Poor, honest, my compass, she kept an extra key and a conscience. I wrote the numbers into columns. January 2019. Furnace repair $1,200. June 2020, loan for Mom's car $2,500. December 2021. Deposit for Riley's pop-up shop $4,000. Total, the quiet weight of decades. I'd been the family's emergency budget and their best-kept secret. If you're watching this, say in the comments, do you keep receipts of the people who love you until you can't anymore? Hit subscribe. This is the moment paper becomes power. I called the bank. Please confirm the auto-pay cancellation for my account, I said. The agent verified. It will stop at midnight tomorrow. I requested official notices to be mailed and emailed. Proof, not performance. Riley texted 3 times within the hour. Harper, think of the kids. Don't do this. Her messages had that special mix of accusation and choreography I'd seen before. If she wanted to shame me, she'd have to show me where the shame lived on paper. Owen hovered, then left the room to take a call. He didn't object. He didn't comfort. He watched the family storm brew like weather, comfortable under its canopy. Aunt June came over with a thermos and a look that said she'd been keeping watch. She sat and said plainly, "You'll need witnesses if it gets ugly." She is the only one who calls a thing by its name. Cost, not character. I nodded. We began to make copies. bank statements, receipts, the ledger entries that read like a map of all the kindness that had never been thanked. By noon my inbox had a new message. A forwarded family chat snippet where someone, Riley probably, had stitched together a narrative. Harper is being selfish. Harper is trying to erase us. The line was half true. I closed the laptop and practiced saying the real sentence to myself. I am not the family's A-team. Break time equals 2/. That night, someone pounded on our door around 11. Neighbors probably upset by noise. I opened, braced, and there stood Aunt June with a small paper bag, 2 slices of lemon cake and a peaceable war plan. By morning a courier arrived with an envelope labeled in perfect serif. Notice of intent, reclamation proceedings. My name was on it in 3 places. The family's plan had a legal wing. They hired a low-cost attorney who liked the righteousness of form letters. I sat at my kitchen table and laid the letter beside my ledger. The letter used phrases like family obligation and implied caretaker status. It asserted that since I had been paying certain household expenses, I owed them priority should a reversal occur. Legally this was flimsy. Emotionally it was heavy. I scanned it, added it to the file, and called the attorney on the other end. This is bullying dressed as paperwork, my lawyer said, pragmatic and focused. We respond. We file for declaratory relief if they try to claim funds. Don't be alarmed by the tone. Prepare for it. If you're watching, tell me if anyone has ever tried to weaponize love with a printed notice. Comment below and remember to subscribe. Paper backed by intention can be undone by paper backed by truth. Riley posted a thin apology in the family chat, between angry emojis and legal threats. This is a misunderstanding, she wrote. But the photos of Luca with a spoon and the memory of his spit had already posted themselves into my bones. The bank called. We've received a dispute on the autopay cancellation. I forwarded them my confirmation email. They paused, then said, we'll hold until documentation is provided. Aunt June suggested mediation. You'll need witnesses and public record. She volunteered to testify about the loans never repaid, the roof fixed with my account, the winter heater I purchased. I cried then, briefly, hysterical not from sadness but from the absurdity of translating love into ledgers. Break time equals 2/. That night, Riley came with a man who introduced himself as a family financial officer. He had charts. He had a spreadsheet that showed expected contributions and family consumption. He was calm as bureaucracy and twice as cold. You can be reasonable, he said. Reverse the autopay. We'll sign an agreement. He slid a contract across the table. It read like mercy with handcuffs. You want me to sign a confession, I said. To be legally obligated to your whims. I set the contract on fire. Not literally, but I told him, no. Not under these terms. Riley's voice rose then, the sound of someone losing an audience. You'll lose the family, she warned. I laughed once, softly. Maybe I already have. Then I added, and I've got receipts. Things move faster when they air. Riley thought her friend's sympathetic comments would drown my ledger. Instead, my ledger drove light into corners. I uploaded a single post, the truth unclothed. Dates, amounts, scanned receipts, and a photo of Luca's plate with a smear of gravy, captioned, "This is what your family teaches." It spread like sunlight through blinds. Allies surfaced. Neighbors who'd never met me in person but knew the value of fidelity. Town forums divided. Some called me cruel. Others asked when they could send me coffee. If you're watching, tell me, have you ever used public attention to make private wrongs public? Like and subscribe. This is the part where privacy becomes accountability. Riley's supporters tried counterposts. Clips from dinners, edited to show me leaving angrily. But the receipts were stubborn. The bank's fraud unit, once they saw the documents, called to confirm. You documented carefully, the investigator said. Keep copies. The family chat fractured into private messages. Mom texted me, be reasonable. You embarrassed us. I replied, I counted. Owen read and nodded. He offered quiet support. No thumbs up now, only steady presence. A local reporter reached out, smelling a story. Family feud, finance, humiliation. I declined. This was not entertainment. By midnight a petition arrived, signed by neighbors asking for calm, and by 2 a.m. Riley's panic tilted into action. She filed for emergency equitable relief, asking the court to compel the bank to reinstate autopay pending adjudication. Her affidavit leaned on phrases like family cohesion and emotional harm. My lawyer moved faster. No one can compel the bank to debit without authorization, she said. But they can make a scene to win hearts. We respond with facts. Break time equals 2:. The judge set a hearing date. The town cried out in comment threads. My inbox filled with strangers' bravery. If you need witnesses, I'll come. Aunt June prepared a statement. Owen offered to testify to my habit of quiet care. For the first time, the web of people who'd been invisible became visible. And at 11:42 p.m., the family group chat sent one last message before we all slept. A photograph, Riley's hand in a service pose, and a note. We'll see you tomorrow in court. The courthouse smelled like old varnish and coffee. We sat at opposite tables, families in place, attorneys like chess players. Riley's counsel presented their case. Disruption, harm, family unity threatened. My counsel placed a thick manila folder on the bench and opened it like a map. Receipts. Cancel confirmations. Witness statements from Aunt June and neighbors who'd seen me patch roofs and buy medicine. If you're watching, type below whether you've ever been judged in public and found peace in a folder. Subscribe, because paper can hold a woman up. The judge, sharp, tired, looked at the evidence. He asked questions that were blunt instruments. Did you have authorization for the autopay? I did. Were you coerced? No. Was there harm to the children? The question landed like a fist. I answered carefully. I responded to years of unilateral expectations without reciprocity. I set a boundary. Riley's lawyer argued this was cruelty on my part, done publicly to humiliate. He had a point for an audience. My lawyer had a better one. The plaintiff seeks to compel a private bank to reinitiate transfers without evidence of contractual obligation. The defendant has presented clear termination notice and proof of payments previously made voluntarily. Witnesses were called. Aunt June described the pattern of temporary loans. A neighbor, Mr. Alvarez, described Luca's behavior and the way he mimicked adults. Owen testified about our household finances and how I'd covered emergency repairs. The courtroom buzzed like a beehive when the jury leaned one way and then the other. After hours, the judge ruled. No injunctive relief. He noted the weight of voluntary payments and the lack of a binding contract. He encouraged mediation. I exhaled like someone who'd been holding water and finally let it spill. The family sat in the gallery, faces thin with fatigue. Riley stared at me, incredulous and small. Break time equals 2:. Outside, the air felt different. People hugged in small, surprised pockets. A woman in the crowd said, "You did the hard math." Somewhere a child laughed. Owen wrapped an arm around my shoulders. Aunt June clapped my hand like applause. That night we didn't celebrate. We made soup and read. The ledger stayed on the counter, not triumphant but present. I slept, the kind of sleep that comes after a long argument with truth. A week after the court, the house vibrated like a body that had been learning new instructions. Riley had gone quiet online. Mom had been seen at the grocery paying for her own cart. Dad paused before making a demand. Not all change is dramatic. Most of it is small and slow. If you're watching, comment the small change you made that had the biggest ripple. Subscribe. This is the part when consequences become repair. Riley tried to apologize in public and then in private. She brought Luca one afternoon with a paper in her hand, a drawing of a sun and the words, "Sorry." He looked embarrassed, awkward, but genuine in a way children can be when taught better. She said to me too, "I'm sorry, Harper. I was protecting something I thought was mine." Her voice broke. I listened. I didn't hug her then. I accepted a coffee and a promise to enroll Luca in anger management for kids. Mom sat me down and said, "We didn't see how we were making you small." Her eyes were raw. I told her what I needed: repayment schedule for the big items, public acknowledgement of the pattern, and one family meeting in which we set rules. She agreed. It felt like billable hours of forgiveness. Owen, who'd been quiet, surprised me. One night he printed a new budget and a list of things we would no longer cover for family without signed agreements. He looked at me. "I should have said something," he said. "I didn't want to be the loud spouse." His apology was not theatrical. It was blueprints and folded corners. Aunt June came over with a banner she'd knitted, "Boundaries are love." She put it over our mantel. It flapped like a small flag of a new country. But there were still hard parts. Some relatives refused to comply. They texted angrily and then blocked my number so they could feel chastened without changing. Others reached out slowly. 2 neighbors offered affidavits supporting Aunt June's testimony about repeated hand-me-down promises from Mom and Dad. Slowly, the ledger's entries became less of proof and more of a curriculum. Break time equals 2/. One evening, Luca came over with a small glass jar. Inside, marbles each labeled with a kindness. He explained he was collecting them to show he could be good. I put my hand on his shoulder and said, "You don't have to collect proofs. You can just be." He looked at me, then at his mother, and said, "I'm practicing." It was the smallest revolution. That night we all sat at the table. Mom, Dad, Riley, Owen, Aunt June, and me. We read the rules aloud. We signed them. The signatures were small witnesses. A family choosing to be less hungry for what belonged to someone else. Months later the ledger looked different. Some lines were crossed as paid. Others had columns for restitution. People kept some promises and failed at others. But the pattern had shifted. Where once my money had been the family's invisible glue, now it was a recorded agreement. If you're still reading, drop a comment. What counted for you, paper proof or changed behavior? Don't forget to subscribe. This channel is for people who turn hurt into terms and teach family to pay attention. We cooked together one Sunday. Luca served soup proudly. Mom worked the salad eyes softer. Dad told a story from before my time about a man who kept his word and how the town remembered him because he did. Riley hugged me then, not for show but because her son climbed my lap and asked for a story. She whispered, "Thank you for not fighting me. For making me fix it." It was the kind of thank you that needs doing to be credible. Aunt June sat in her chair with knitting. "You were patient with the math," she said. "Patience is different from letting them live off your kindness." Owen and I rebalanced the accounts. We set savings for our children and a donation fund that would help other families who'd been taken for granted. We also set an emergency line not accessible by anyone in my birth family, an insurance of autonomy. In the family group chat there were fewer fireworks. Sometimes a message arrived, check-in, and sometimes a small selfie from Riley and Luca at a park with the caption, "Learning." Those were the messages I saved. I kept the ledger in a drawer with the cover soft from use. On the front page I wrote a small note. Boundaries are kind. Boundaries are truth. I folded it like a map and put it away. If you've been betrayed, remember. Counting is not cruel. Counting is a language they can't argue with. Evidence is not vengeance. It is a request to be seen. Have you ever stood your ground and changed the rules? Share your story in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe. I closed the drawer, turned the key in my own house, and smiled the quiet smile of someone who had finally gotten to keep her own space. She closed the door forever.